I think the site actually almost completes the work. If you were to take it away and put it somewhere else, it wouldn't be the same piece, and many artists would say that destroys the work. So it's responsive to the site in however many different ways the artist has conceived of it.
I think what I enjoy most about this walk down, I feel like I'm in a kind of a time machine. Among the great things about this is every once in a while turning around and looking back up at the rock face and seeing it up against the sky. And I think that's where I began to get this sense that as we pass sort of millions of years of deposition, different types of rock, you really get a sense of the time and the distance. And some of the rocks down in this area are from the time of Pangaea, before the continents were actually formed. That's such an awesome bit of information. These incredible rocks that are leaning and hanging over. I think that's probably the birth of the piece for me, is trying to get that feeling of these rocks just sort of going up and up and up. When I came into this space, the amazing thing for me was, on the one hand, seeing rocks that are many millions of years old, some 600 million years old, some 40 million, 30 million, all changed by times in the incredible force of water over those long periods. Yet as old as they are, and they're rocks, so there's virtually no life, yet everywhere you look it's green, and you see the wind blowing the ferns that are growing here, and the various things from tiny bits of moss that are hanging onto the rocks to these massive straight trees that are just heading straight up to the sun. I would say less important to me than the object that I make is the journey that I take to make that piece of sculpture. And I think I hope that afterward people aren't so engaged with the thing, but how they respond to it, to the sculpture. So I'm really not trying to draw attention to the sculpture, but somehow its context, and make that richer for the viewer, and maybe have them feel a little bit what I felt.
Maybe we need to let the public react to it. You know, are they accepting of it? Is this adding to the site? Would they rather it just not be here, or do they like it? Do they not like it? All of that conversation. So it's really, I think, more the people who come upon it by surprise. You know, they're coming to the Butterfly Conservatory or the Botanical Gardens there, and they bump up against it and they're surprised by it, and it's their reaction that I'm most interested in. I expect that people will touch it. I know that's something Gordon talked about. Kids will be running through it, you know, trying to fit themselves into the little grooves. So it's not just this thing that sits there and has no life to it.
It's not a fence around it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
thoughts or worries that you had at that
Oh,
point?
definitely. I mean, it's two massive pieces of steel. How is that all going to work? How is it going to come together on the site? I imagine it's a nightmare for the artist to plan it all, to that meticulous attention to all the different aspects, from the finish to the way it's going to appear in light, and how the sky will be reflected, and what it will look like in snow and in rain. The technical aspects are always fascinating. So the process within the foundry and the fabrication, I have just immense respect for someone who can work all that out. And so then coming to the site, it was still unexpected. How, even though I've seen drawings, had seen the work, in the foundry, and he had described it. We talked about the two sides in proximity to each other, and his visions for how it would come together. But then when you actually see it, it's quite different. And that, I guess, is that additional component of the site-specific aspect, which is that you will see the reflection of the sky, and you will see it in proximity to other structures and people running by, and all of those aspects of the site itself that will complete the work.
The way in for me often, once I've been in a place, is listening to music. And in this case, the Benedictus was just such a piece that allowed me, when I was thinking about all that I see here, and trying to process, it just allowed me to go deeper and see different layers of meaning. And then I wanted to draw attention with the sculpture, once again, not to itself, but a feeling of passing from one world or one reality to another. And so you're intended, just like the water passes through these canyons of rock, you're intended to pass through those two canyons, two walls of steel. And the reference to things going forever, of course, I use stainless steel so it won't deteriorate or degenerate in many of our lifetimes. But once you're in there, people have told me their voice, the sound of their voice changes, they touch the walls. And so that very act of touching puts them in the moment, in the instant. And it's brief, but as they pass out the other side, they feel like they have moved from one place to another, but with awareness. We're always doing that in our lives. But are we as aware as we might be of those moments in our life that are so intense and so full, and sometimes we just get caught up in life and don't see them. So the sculpture is to draw your attention physically to the environment and conceptually or even emotionally to this interior life that we all live inside our own minds. And constantly aware of the wind moving the trees, and I felt somehow that I had to find a way to get deeper into that and understand it. So those are the things that music allows me to access when I come to a place like this. And when I'm back in my studio, I often listen to the same 7 minutes of music for hours at a time, one time after another. And I don't even think I hear the music as so much as feel it somehow. And it just kind of allows me to flow in amongst the sounds created by the composer and the musicians.
So you talked before about the sound. But will the wind make a sound, do you think?
That's a good question, because this is like a huge sail.
Yeah.
And there could be, if there was sound that wind had caused, I suspect it might be like the creaking of a ship or something like that.
One of the most interesting challenges in doing this piece was trying to tie together such disparate elements as this gorge and all that it is in the garden. And I knew instinctively or intuitively that my job was to sort of mediate, to be between those two extremes and have people get a sense of where we fit into things. And that's like the most elemental, what's the meaning of life? And there is no answer, but it's a worthy question, obviously, to search for. And when I look at this water moving and turning and the color, look at it, I mean, it's an incredible color and it's constant. It's not hard to believe in forever when you look at something like that. And the minute you think that, you suddenly realize that things are not forever. We've damaged so much, and we've suddenly realized all of this is not limitless. You know, when you look at these massive chunks of rock here that have been worn by, they obviously were formed or worn away into this condition at the bottom of a great waterfall over millions of years, acting like sandpaper, small pebbles, then bigger and bigger pebbles, and finally the one that you can see is worn all the way through. I mean, that even to do that with a rock drill using our technology, that would be a massive undertaking. And it sits here before us like some kind of a miracle. When I cross the street up above here, into that garden, once again we're looking at all the things that live there. On the one hand, the botanical garden, with vast covers and elements of the flowers and the things that grow there. And the birds, you hear them here. They're just somehow a background, a pleasant background. And even the butterflies, which, you know, grow for a season and then die in a few hours in some cases, or a few days, and they start their cycle again. That's so hopeful. And I've talked to many people since the sculpture was finished, and they share that very much in going to those places. But then to think about something like this, and you go, you know, like people my age got to start thinking about dying. And what I often think about is, you know, it really doesn't matter. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I don't ever sort of worry about it. Because you feel like you've had really an interesting moment, but make sure you enjoy the moments you have, especially when you got kids. This cataclysmic event, this massive, massive event that we're witness to here happened over a course of perhaps 1 million years, building to that moment, almost the way earthquakes happen. And then it happened and it was over. And here they sit millions of years later, unmoved and unchanged. And it's thoughts like that that were in my mind all the time while I was making the sculpture. How do I suggest to people these incredible extremes? And in the end, what's the reason for doing that? I think it's getting a sense of where we fit into the cosmos, into the great questions.
Gaachdeyagma. Wasco gamas in a quay and dishnakas. Anadumina singing Dunjaba. Can you do them on a snowbike quay and down? I'd like to welcome everyone to this beautiful spot. The men in my family who were hereditary chiefs and they were warriors. They actually fought in the War of 1812. My great-great-grandfather and his brothers, they fought at the Battle of Queenston Heights, and they traveled down this gorge centuries ago. My family's from Manitoulin Island, and I also have family south of this border because it was the War of 1812 that created that border. This piece that I've composed for the unveiling of this beautiful sculpture, which captures the straits of water in this area, which were carved by the water and continue to be carved because it keeps doing that through time. The river keeps changing. And this piece is called Gaachdeyagma, which means there are narrow passages of water, and that's in the Odawa language, Odawa.
hoping there will be little echoes of that for the people that see the sculpture and do this, or come here and then see the sculpture. And it's not important to me that it even be on a conscious level. Like, I don't expect people to, oh yeah, I've seen that here somehow. I just think it touches a part of memory that's maybe not even normally accessible, but is significant. I really felt like I was in a special place where man's invention of time meant virtually nothing. It could not be comprehended in terms of our times. So there's nothing you can do here where you don't put the veil of vast amounts of time over your thoughts. And then when you go to the garden, that's for me was understanding the site. That's really what it was about for me.
This is very different. This is kind of wild and very dynamic, really, for the way that it's sited and the materials that he's used.
You see this water rushing by us. You know that it's 20% of the Earth's fresh water passing right before us right now. And if you look at all of this on a map, what you see is a line demarking US and Canada between the two lakes. And so this, the way we tell people about this in our way conventionally, is a map that says, we own this, you own that. But this river, we don't own it, like we share it. And I see it as somehow a message that we should be more together and less apart. And it starts with people owning things to the exclusion of other people. And all that people talk about today is the division between people, and they think it's just happened, but it's always been the case. It's natural to be divided, and it means that people have to struggle against that aspect of our nature to be together. It won't just happen. You have to figure out how to do that.
And I think that's a key part of doing a work of public art, is that it forces you to look at the space in a completely different way. It's not always going to be what people want to see. Public art can be contentious, but just by the fact of it being there makes you look more closely at things that you might pass by all the time. So that's the particular genius, I think, of this sculpture.
Nancy, stand back there. You always want to be far enough away that it won't lean and fall on you. So you can see in all that I'm saying, I'm kind of talking around a subject. People say, what does it mean, or what is it about? And other people respond, it can be what you want it to be. No, it isn't about what you want it to be. It's a level far below wanting things. It's simply experiencing things, like the coolness on a day, or you know, the feeling you have before a thunderstorm. That's kind of the intent for me, is to simply set up a situation so that you're intensely aware, if only a few moments, for a few moments, of where you are and what you're thinking. So all of that started here in this place, and And I hope people will share in that a little bit too.